Hey, are you ready to make some great pictures of fireworks? I'm going to show you how to do it on today's episode of
Ask David Bergman.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Here I am, as always, answering your photography questions. If you've got photo questions, just go to askdavidbergman.com. Submit your question right there on the site. I just might pick it to answer here on a future show. Also, if you're not already a subscriber to the Adorama YouTube channel, do us a favor and click that button down below. Use the bell icon. You'll be notified as soon as new photo shows come out all week long from myself and the other photo hosts here on Adorama TV. I've got a question today sent in from Daryl S, and Daryl wants to know, what is the best way to photograph fireworks shows? I've tried it and the results vary from almost perfect to absolutely unusable. There must be a reliable method to get a high percentage of good shots. Well, Daryl, I can't guarantee anything because whenever we're talking about something creative, there are always a lot of variables involved. But there are absolutely ways to increase your chances of making some cool fireworks pictures. Now, it's almost July 4th, and here in the United States, that's a big fireworks holiday. So if you want to give it a shot on July 4th, I'm going to walk you through the process that should increase your chances of making some awesome shots. Now, recently I was out at Fairfield Properties Ballpark. I was shooting the Long Island Ducks out there. Thanks to the Ducks for having me. Again, I really appreciate you allowing me to come out there and shoot a couple of videos. I did one about teleconverters a couple weeks ago. And then after the game, they had a fireworks show. A lot of teams do that. The Ducks put on a great fireworks show for the kids out there. It was super fun, and I was able to photograph it. So what I'm going to do is go over my process on how I did that. And you guys can use as many of these tips as possible to make your own great fireworks pictures. Now, the first step really is planning. So in advance, I asked them where the fireworks were going to go off, right? They do them all the time at the ballpark. If I'm standing here, where are they going to be? Are they out there? Are they that way? Are they that way? Where are they going to happen? Is it this wide? Is it really narrow? Give me an idea of what it looks like, right? So if you make sure that you're ready, you want to have all your gear in place long before the show starts, because once the show starts, it's going to go fast. Let me tell you, you might only have a few minutes. Even if it's a long fireworks show, it's still not a lot of time. You want to make as many photos as you can, so be prepared. The second step is to go ahead and pick your location. Ideally, you want to have some context in your frame. So that means have something in the foreground or the background, usually the foreground if we're talking about fireworks. Pictures of bursts of light just by themselves isn't really interesting, right? It's not, there's no context of where it is. Maybe, are you in a city? Maybe you could put a city skyline where I was shooting my videos and without getting wet, without getting hit by any foul balls. So I was a little limited as far as where I could go, but I wanted to show that we were in the ballpark, right? And so again, not just tight shots of bursts. So I wanted to go wide enough so you could see the outfield, you could see the scoreboard, you knew where we were. If you know that ballpark, you know exactly where we are. So that's something you always want to try to do in your fireworks photos. It really, to add context, makes a big difference. Number 3 is you're going to be shooting with a slow shutter speed, and you can't handhold that when you're making exposures that are that long. So a tripod really is necessary, right? You can also use things, if you don't want to bring a full-size tripod, you can use something like a Manfrotto super clamp and magic arm, or even a Platypod floor plate or something like that with a ball head on it. Those are all things that I use to set up remote cameras, so they're rock solid, and just put them in locations that's nothing's gonna move, right? If I'm using a tripod, I'm gonna generally hang my heavy camera bag with like a bungee cord for extra stability, right? Because I don't want that thing to move. If you're clamped to a railing with a magic arm or something like that and a super clamp, you want to make sure it's not a railing that people are going to be moving, right? That it's going to be rock solid. If that thing moves with long exposures, you're going to have a lot of motion, and you don't want to do that. You don't want any chance of movement. I'm also going to use a cable release, so I don't even have to touch the camera, right? I don't want any motion on the camera at all. Rock solid and stable. Number 4, in addition, you should really shoot on full manual exposure and manual focus. You want to pre-focus on your location and then switch the button on the lens if it has it from autofocus to manual focus. If you're on autofocus, the focus is going to be hunting back and forth, especially in the night sky before the fireworks are there. It's not going to have anything to lock on, so it's going to be all over the place, and your images are just going to be, some of them are going to be out of focus. It's not going to be focused where you want. And then manual exposure, you want to choose the exposure. You don't want to let the camera, it might be fooled by all those bursts. It's going to try to darken down your exposure. So preset your exposure manually and your focus, lock those things down, set it, and forget it. And then other camera settings. The big secret to making great pictures of fireworks is to use a long exposure, as I kind of mentioned already. You're going to use a very slow shutter speed and capture multiple bursts in one shot. We're talking like 2, 4, or even 8 second long exposures. It's way more interesting than just capturing a single burst. So what you want to do to get that is you want to lower your ISO as much as possible and close down your aperture. You might have to shoot at f22 or f32 if you can get away with it. If you'd prefer to shoot at something like f8 or f11, because that's a sort of the sweet spot of your lenses, you could add a neutral density filter to get those longer shutter speeds. It's up to you. Shutter speed really can vary depending on how many bursts that you want in each frame. If, for example, you were only shooting bursts with no context, right, which I don't recommend, but if you were doing that, you could just shoot bulb mode and hold down the shutter with your cable release, hopefully, until you really see that you have enough bursts covering the sky, right, and then stop. But since I like to have context, and I know I'm going to have other ambient light, lit objects in the photos, I really have to pre-check my exposure for that available light. So whatever that exposure is, that's what I'm going to set up. In this case, at the ballpark, I was at 100 ISO at f22 and was shooting 4-second long exposures. So those are really your settings and your setup for that. When I went out there, I shot as many different 4-second long exposures as I could get in the short amount of time. The pictures overall, they look pretty good. I did get a high percentage of keepers, a couple of full disclosure. I obviously, it was very foggy, so I had to tone these images up. I had to add some contrast and things like that to sort of overcome the fog that was out there. And I also, there was a netting across that had one line running right through the middle of the picture. I did Photoshop that out. I took the time to do that. I knew it was going to be there, and really, like I said, because of the location where I was somewhat, limited to where I could shoot, I had to get that out of there. I would have rather not had that in the frame because it did take quite a while to get rid of it, but I was able to do it and made some great pictures. So at that point, really, it's just a matter of going through, picking the best frames where the fireworks look interesting. You never really know because of those long exposures, but hopefully, Daryl, you'll have a few that in there that work for you, and they're not absolutely unusable, right? I hope that helps. And everyone else out there who's looking to make some cool fireworks photos this year, remember, the 5 things. You want to plan out your shoot. You want to pick a location that's going to give your image some context. Make sure your camera is totally stable. Use a cable release, manual focus, manual exposure, and shoot with a very long shutter speed to get multiple bursts in each image. If you do all of that, you should be good to go and have some great usable, more than usable fireworks photos. So that's it. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. Remember, askdavidbergman.com to submit your photo questions. I appreciate you being here. I'll be back here next time with a brand new question. You guessed it, right here, your favorite show, Ask David Bergman.